Is it a good thing to take revenge? Is it a good thing to avenge those who we feel have been unfairly treated, to act with vengeance and vindictiveness? Is nekama a good thing? It's very complicated. It seems that it's a positive thing. Indeed, it's a mitzvah. In this week's parasha, Matot, it says, Nekom nikmata Midianim. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, the Midianites, who caused a terrible plague to the Jewish people, they need to be dealt with in a retaliatory way. And use the word nekama, revenge. On the other hand, we all know that it explicitly says in the Torah, in Parashat Kedoshim, lo yikom v'lo titor. As part of the way we should behave as dignified human beings, we should never take revenge on people, to the extent that the Rambam says in Hilchot Deot, the Hilchot of character traits, that a person who is driven by nakamanut, a person who is driven by nekama, he said it's a person, it's midah ra'ad ma'od, it's a terrible character trait, and people should not have this character trait. So how is it, that if that is the case, that the Torah mandates and commands us to have nekama, retribution, and avenge the Midianites? And how is it that recently we know that a person who's passed away or was killed al Kiddush Hashem, we often traditionally add the words Hashem yikom damo, God should avenge his death. And indeed, the Israeli army Tzahal just allowed on graves in Israel, because it's been very standard until now, to add the words Hashem yikom damo, that Hashem should avenge the death of the person. So is it okay to avenge and to seek revenge, to act with vengeance, or is it not? Of course, what Judaism is about balance. It depends on the context. If we are personally driven by a sense of vindictiveness, it can create a cycle of violence and create self-destruction that goes to the core of what we're about. Indeed, if you read arguably Shakespeare's greatest play, Hamlet, Hamlet is about how the desire for revenge causes madness, causes a cycle of violence where everybody who touches it gets killed. The famous Alexandre Dumas' Count of Monte Cristo, a life driven by vengeance is a life which is overrun with a single madness to get even with people, and is often destructive and self-destructive. So that, of course, is negative, and a person should not act with revenge and vengeance and vindictiveness. But when it's about upholding justice, when it is about those who have been unfairly killed, and those where justice needs to be, we need to seek it out, there is a different word in English, the word avenge. And indeed, we know that in the Marvel comics, which will become a whole series, the Avengers, people who stand on the side of justice is there to avenge. And indeed, says Rashi, why is it that God chooses Nekom nikmata Midianim to act with a vengeance towards the Midianites? Because he says, as opposed to the Moabites, says Rashi, the Moabites had a reasonable fear of the Jewish people. Balak thought that they perhaps were going to come through his land, maybe take his land, and therefore there was a geopolitical context to this. He was fearful, and therefore he acted in a way where he took on the Jewish people. But Midian, no geopolitical issues, no land disputes. They simply came to curse the Jewish people, Bilam, and then to attack the Jewish people through spiritually with a plague, causing the death of so many. Says Rashi, when they came without any reason, simply to do evil in the world, that's something which has to be avenged. What Hamas did on October 7th continues to do. A time of a ceasefire, in a time of the most barbaric, uncalled for, unprovoked death, barbarism, decimation, is an act which cannot go unpunished for the sake of justice, for the sake of avenging the death and the murder and those who have been so badly treated. And I want to say, thank God this week, where the Jewish people in the state of Israel settled a score with Ismail Haniyeh, one of the arch murderers of our time, who walks around in capital cities and five-star hotels, whereas there is so much blood in his hands. And we hope and pray that those with blood in their hands, that Hashem yikom, as it says it clearly at the end of Parashat Hazino, Kidam avadav yikom, Hashem yikom damam, that Hashem will avenge for the sake of justice, not for the sake of vindictiveness and vengefulness that we should stay away from, but for the sake of justice, for the sake of those, the innocent blood that is being spilt. And we hope and pray that indeed all those who need to be brought to justice will be brought to justice, and those who have suffered innocently, their blood should be avenged. Shabbat Shalom.